Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We are going to discuss, we were discussing maybe a month ago or more, the story of Parsaram killing Kartavya Arjuna and being chastised by his father, Jamdagani. And at that time I had read a purport, which was amazing. And Jamdagani was the father of Parsaram, and he was not happy that Parsaram had killed Kartavya Arjuna in retrieving a cow that Kartavya Arjuna stole. And I thought I would just go to the Bhagavatam and find that purport, and I thought I knew where it was. It was an amazing purport, and I wanted to base this class on that purport. And my database doesn't work on my phone, on my computer, and my tablet is dead. And I can't search it, so I got the Bhagavatam, the real thing. You remember these things? Books? People used to use those. So I've got the real thing here, and I'm going through it, and I don't find the purport I'm looking for. And I thought it was the last purport in a particular chapter. And I don't want to have to paraphrase it myself, because I'd rather read it. But somehow or other, I'm not finding it. Anyway, I'm going to talk and look for it while I talk. Yeah. It's amazing, I can't find it. Anyway, it's an amazing story. I think we had talked about it before. Parsaram is a Shaktivish avatar. It's one of the Das avatars, 10 incarnations. Shaktivish means a jiva soul who was empowered by Krishna. And he drove the Kshatriyas out of India when they became degraded. Either killed them or drove them. Killed them and drove. The ones that got away, drove them out. And so the story that we're discussing here is a story that relates to forgiveness. There's a kind of cow, excuse me, there's a kind of cow called the Kamadhenu. And there was a person named Kartavya Arjuna who visited the home of Jamdagani, and Jamdagani is the father of Parsaram. Parsaram was not present at the time. And he took care of him, he fed him and his associates. And Kartavya Arjuna was wondering, how was it possible that he was able to take care of us so nicely? And then he found it was the Kamadhenu cow. The Kamadhenu cow is a cow which gives you whatever you want. Amazing cow. I have never seen one. But he gives whatever, the cow gives whatever you want. So then Kartavya Arjuna thought, okay, this cow is special, I'm going to steal it. For some reason, he thought he had the right to do that. So later, shortly after, Parsaram comes back, and Parsaram it's actually they're Brahmins. He's born in a Brahmin family, but he has this Kshatriya spirit. And he became really upset that the cow was stolen, so he went. And he got the cow back, and in doing so, he killed Kartavya Arjuna. And his father was not happy at all with what he had done. So, I'll read, this is Canto 9, Chapter 15, this is text 37. Parsaram described to his father and brothers his activities in killing Kartavya Arjuna. Upon hearing of these words, of these deeds, Jamdagani spoke to his son as follows. O great hero, my dear son Parsaram, you have unnecessarily killed the king who is supposed to be the embodiment of all the demigods. Thus you have committed a sin. Now, you remember the story of Parikshit Maharaj, and I'm sure you all know the story. And Samik Rishi was in meditation. Parikshit Maharaj came. He was hungry, thirsty. Samik Rishi didn't come out of meditation. And Parikshit Maharaj was upset and took a snake and put it on his body. And his son, Shringi, got so upset and angry, he cursed Maharaj Parikshit to die. Now, if you go further into the story, you find that later, when Samik Rishi came out of meditation, his son was crying because he was regretting what he had done. And yeah, you can hear, right? His son was regretting what he had done. And then Samik Rishi was also regretting what he had done. He was lamenting that his son had, it was a horrible thing. His son had cursed the king of the universe, the king of this planet, to die. That's pretty heavy. And he had Brahminical powers, so it was going to happen. Of course, Parikshit Maharaj could have counteracted it, but he took it as Krishna's arrangement. But that's not how Samik Rishi didn't see it that way. So he was really, really upset. And so a similar thing here, that your son comes back and says, well, I've got the cow back, and by the way, I killed Kartavya Arjuna. So what's so amazing? Well, this verse says, the last line, I'm going to find the word for sin. Yeah, papam. Papam means sinful. Sometimes we call a father Papa. Papa means sin. So he says to Parsaram, one of the Das avatars, Shaktivish avatar, he says to him an amazing thing: you have committed a sin. Wow. Shaktivish avatar can commit a sin. That's amazing. Now, you may know the story of Yudhishthira, and which is the verse? It is Srimad Bhagavatam 9:15-38. Bhavan papam akarashit. Karashi means executed. Bhavan, you. Papam, sin. You have executed a sin. I thought devotees were sinless, and I thought there's no reaction for their sins. And here he's saying you committed a sin. Interesting, isn't it? Okay. How does that work? Well, Yudhishthira, Pandava's eternal associate of Krishna, was told by Krishna to say Ashwatthama is dead. And he didn't want to say it because it wasn't true. Then Krishna said, well, say Ashwatthama, and under your breath say the elephant. Ashwatthama, the elephant, is dead. So that way you won't be lying. So Prabhupada said, because he hesitated to follow Krishna's order, he had to see hell. That's amazing. So, what do we understand here? Well, there's a verse in the Padma Purana that says even if you do dharma, but it's not pleasing to Krishna, it's sinful. And so, this was the case with Yudhishthira, that he was dharmic, he wouldn't lie, but Krishna asked him to lie. And so therefore, the understanding that we're given, the higher understanding, is that even if you do dharma, but that dharma isn't pleasing to Krishna, then it's sinful. Of course, you could say, well, if it's dharma, it would be pleasing to Krishna, and generally that's true. But in this specific case, Krishna told him to do one thing, and Yudhishthira did the dharmic thing, and therefore he had to see hell, Prabhupada said. It was considered sinful. So we have the same thing here, and this should kind of sober us up. That Jamdagani is saying, okay, the cow was stolen, you went, you returned the cow, and in doing so you killed Jamdagani, and you killed Kartavya Arjuna. In some way you could rationalize that as being dharmic because he deserved it and so on. But that's not the way it was seen by Jamdagani. It was unnecessary killing. And even from Jamdagni's point of view, even unnecessary to bring the cow back. Let him have it. And then here it is said, Parsaram has committed sin. That's amazing, I think. So then, as devotees, we think, oh, well, if I do something sinful, my guru he'll suffer, but I won't suffer. He gets all the karma. Of course, that is not the proper way to think, but we should not think that we're absolved of reactions. Next, verse 39, my dear son, we are all Brahmins and have become worshipable for the people in general because of our quality of forgiveness. It is because of this quality that Lord Brahma, the supreme spiritual master of this universe, has achieved his post. So now Jamdagani is explaining to Parsaram that as Brahmins we are forgiving. This is our foremost quality. And this is how Brahma achieved his post, which is amazing. That's not common knowledge that Brahma achieved his post through forgiveness. And because we're forgiving, that qualifies us as Brahmins. And here he says, because we're forgiving, we're worshipable, which is interesting, by the people in general. So we as Brahmins are forgiving, we're worshipable by the people in general because we're forgiving, and Brahma achieved his post because of forgiveness. So you should have just forgiven Kartavya Arjuna. It's not a big deal. You acted wrongly. So he was very unhappy. Text 40. The duty of a Brahmana is to culture the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is pleased with those who are forgiving. So really, in the context of this story, sin means you displease Krishna, and proper action, or so-called piety, but even beyond piety, transcendental activity, means that you're pleasing Krishna. So Jamdagani is trying to explain to Parsaram that what you did was a sin, and what you did was not pleasing Krishna, and it wasn't pleasing me. Perhaps he thought he would please his father. Sometimes the son will do something stupid to think that think the father will be pleased, but he's saying no. So this is interesting. It's very interesting. Some things in Krishna consciousness are obvious, and they're so obvious that sometimes we don't see them when we're caught in the midst of a problem. You know, sometimes when you're upset, then you don't see the obvious, right? So sometimes we're upset, not sometimes, often. Often we get upset, and often we hold some grudge towards somebody. We just have ill feeling, and somehow we can't let it go. And we're looking at it, and we're asking ourselves, I'd like to let it go, but why can't I? I just don't feel like it, and so forth. Or we get stuck, or we say, I'm not ready yet to let it go. Or we really feel hurt by what somebody did. In this verse, something that can help us, and something that's so simple, and as I was saying, something that's so often overlooked, is simply the fact that sometimes a decision to do something or not do something can solely and simply be based on one thing. Will this please Krishna or will it not? And sometimes we don't think like that. We think, no, this person doesn't deserve my forgiveness. But here, the verse says, Krishna is pleased if we forgive. And so if there's no other reason in the universe to forgive other than it's pleasing to Krishna, that's the best reason. And sometimes we think we need other reasons, but actually that's the only reason we need. But sometimes we don't recognize that, or we don't remember that, and we hold on to our anger and resentment, or maybe take revenge. So let's read the verse again. The duty of the Brahmin is to culture the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. So the first point of the verse is duty. Let's see the Sanskrit. Is there a word for duty? Yeah, well, Brahmi in connection with Brahminical qualification. Yeah, so that's what Prabhupada uses the word duty. It's a Brahminical qualification. Of course, we're all trying to be to act with Brahminical qualifications. So you have, in this verse, two reasons to forgive. One, if you're Brahmin or trying to be, or want to be, then you should practice forgiveness. Forgiveness is a sattvic quality. Brahmins are in sattva gun. Sometimes devotees say, when am I ready for second initiation? And I say, when you're in sattva guna, that's when you're ready, because that's what it means to be a Brahmin. So naturally Brahmins are forgiving because they're in sattva gun. And then it says here, forgiveness is illuminating like the sun. Well, all sattvic qualities are illuminating, and resentment is tamasic. It's dark, it's dreary, it's ugly. So that's the first point. It's a Brahminical quality, it's a quality of sattva guna. We're all trying to be Brahmins, and naturally, any sattvic quality we should try practicing. And how do you practice sattvic qualities? You practice often, the way we practice them is in relation to people. People treat us in ways which arouse us to act out of anger or envy or whatever it is. Then the practice of sattvic qualities such as tolerance, forgiveness, straightforwardness, speak sweetly, and so forth, we can practice. Because so many of the sattvic qualities are practiced in relation to other people, and that's some of the most challenging situations we're in, is with other people. So here we have that first. It's a Brahminical qualification. This is how Brahmins work. This is how Brahmins live. This is how they traverse the world. They traverse it through sattva guna. And so no matter what's happening in their lives and no matter what's happening around them, they remain sattvic. And there's all this temptation not to be sattvic. But because they're in sattva guna, they don't act out of passion or ignorance. So, Katie's asking, what is sattva guna? Read the Brahminical qualities in the Bhagavad Gita. That's sattva guna. Samadhamastapo socham shantir arjava. The basic, shanti are peaceful. What is peaceful? You can't, unless you're in sattva guna, you can't be peaceful. So you're not disturbed, you're not pulled, you're not aroused by the effects of this world. You get aroused by passion and ignorance. When we are being pulled and dragged around, it's usually because we're allowing ourselves to be pulled by passion and ignorance. So sattva guna is Brahminical. Brahmins are not pulled around. Brahmins are sense-controlled. They control their environment, they control their consciousness, they control their mind, they control their senses. When you descend from sattva into passion and ignorance, you are controlled by those modes. So, but the point that I find so, what is the word? It's so obvious, and it's not so obvious. It's like Prabhupada said, the truth is so obvious. You could miss it. There's a book called In Search of the Obvious. The obvious eludes us. So you're dealing with a situation, and it's a difficult situation, you're not sure how to act. And many times devotees will describe a situation to me and say, I'm in this situation and this person did this and it wasn't fair, it wasn't right, and I don't know how to act. And when they say, I don't know how to act, they mean the underpinning of that is, do I have a right to treat them the way they treated me? Because otherwise, why would you ask how to act when you have Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which has told you how to act in a million different ways? You know how to act. But somehow or in that moment, because you're upset, you're asking, how should I act? In other words, without coming out and saying it, you're basically saying, do I have the right to retaliate because of what they've done? In some cases, maybe, but in most cases, no. It's not Brahminical to retaliate. You have a right to protect yourself, you have a right to defend yourself, but your retaliation will have to be with a lot of goodness in it, a lot of sattva in it, not a lot of hatred and anger. And so why would we even ask the question after Krishna has told us in the 12th chapter of the Gita, my devotee doesn't put people into difficulty. And now we're thinking, do I have the right to put this person into difficulty? Number two, Krishna has given us descriptions of how he's pleased, either through Brahminical qualifications or other qualifications that he's given us in the Gita and the Bhagavatam. Titikshava kurunika suridam sarvadehinam ajata shatavo shanta sadhava sarvabhushana. So, titikshava, merciful, titikshava kurunika, tolerant, Suridasa is a friend of everyone, Ajata doesn't have any enemies. You know. So there's so many shlokas like this. And now we're caught in a situation where somebody mistreats us. And we're asking, what should I do? But don't we understand that if we act out of envy, or if we act out of hatred or resentment, that's not sattvic, that's not right, those are not qualities Krishna has told us to develop. And don't we understand that wouldn't be pleasing to Krishna? No, we forget everything because we're caught with this emotion and we just want to retaliate. That is such a interesting phenomena, that what is so obvious becomes obliviated in the moment when we allow ourselves to be offended and respond from passionate ignorance. And we become angry and upset, and we start thinking what was done was wrong and intolerable and should never have been done. And we're going on and on and on. And we're ranting and raving in a way that has no connection to everything we've learned in the Bhagavatam. Well, I must have deserved it, my karma, I actually deserve worse, and so on and so on. We're supposed to think that way. Now, your friend may say, no, objectively you didn't deserve worse, this person did wrong, and so, yeah, that may be actually true. But we're instructed to think, no, it must be my karma, I must have deserved this, there must be a lesson, something I have to learn, I have to go through this, it'll be purifying, it'll push me forward. That's how we're supposed to think. But in the moment, when things go bad, when we're mistreated, when we expect something to go a certain way and it doesn't, we lose all that. It's amazing, isn't it? So here, in this story, we could say that something similar is happening in Parasurama. Over one stolen cow, he killed somebody. Have you ever done something that's not proportionate to the crime? You've retaliated in a way that's not proportionate to the crime. I'm sure you have at some point, and we're all challenged with that. That's what's going on here. The crime of stealing, and now Parsaram is retaliating with murder. That's not the retaliation for stealing. Sometimes we are hurt, we are offended, and we retaliate. If not externally, internally, we're boiling up. We're retaliating inside, not in proportion to the offense, but actually we're supposed to be tolerant in the first place. So where's the question of retaliating? So what I like about this story is it serves as a kind of, you could say, a light post, because it's not just about forgiveness. It could be about tolerance, it could be about kindness, it could be about compassion, integrity, it could be about any quality. We're in a situation, something happens to us, and somehow or other, we think at that point, we have a right to act as badly as they acted. We have a right to kind of disband our Brahminical qualification and say, okay, because of how you acted, I have a right to retaliate. Not only that, sometimes we think I have a right to retaliate with greater force. There's no shastric basis. Okay, you might say, but what about Kshatriyas and Dharma and this? Yeah, but we're not Kshatriyas, and we're not talking about establishing Dharma. We're just talking about everyday relationships and how we're treated. Okay, if you're the king and you have to establish Dharma and you have, that's another thing. But even there, what we should understand is that when a Kshatriya establishes Dharma, they're not killing because they hate the person. They're killing because they hate the sin. And sometimes we mix that up. We say, look at the Kshatriyas, they're killing, they're doing so many things. It's not out of tamaguna. It would only be out of tamaguna if they're demoniac Kshatriyas. But if you take the Pandavas and any religious Kshatriyas, you see they're fighting for Dharma. They're not fighting because they hate somebody. I hate you, I'm going to kill you. They hate what the person stands for. They hate the sin, not the sinner. So there's never this point where acting out of tamaguna or rajaguna is justifiable. But this is what we do. We try to justify it because we're upset, and we think because a person upset us, we have a right to now descend into the same modes that cause them to upset us, which is, of course, when you stand back and look at it, you think that is a foolish idea, right? It doesn't make any sense, isn't it? It's been pointed out by psychologists that this kind of behavior is the way kids behave. So one kid misbehaves, and then the brother or the sister misbehaves in retaliation to the misbehavior of the kids. Then the parents say, stop fighting, and the kid who retaliated says, he hit me first, as if the fact that he hit me is justifiable for retaliation. And the parents, they say there's no reason, that's not the reason to fight. Now, according to karma, which is so interesting, because karma it's subtle, we don't always understand the intricacies of it, but sometimes in Shastra there are explanations of how karma works. And one explanation is, karma doesn't look at your retaliation and say, oh, you're retaliating for harm. Karma just looks at what you did. You harmed somebody. Now, in some cases, if there are injunctions in Shastra, if someone's coming to kill you, you have a right to defend yourself, you have a right to kill them because they're attacking with a weapon, or they're coming to poison, or they're coming to set fire. There's certain things, but we're talking about ordinary dealings. Somebody hurts you, you retaliate. Rather than allowing Krishna and that karmic situation to resolve itself, we decide, I'm going to resolve it. And then we get karmic reactions for trying to resolve it rather than allowing Krishna to resolve it. So that's important to understand. So now I've been hurt, and human nature is to hurt back. And human nature is to justify the fact that, to adjust, not the fact, the human nature is such that we would justify an action if it is proportionate to the crime committed against us. So you commit a crime against me, you told me something that hurt me, I am justified in telling you something that will hurt you. Tit for tat. What we learn from Shastra and what is being said in this verse is it doesn't work that way. Because the word forgiveness basically means to pardon. So you mistreat me, I pardon you. That's forgiving. That's Brahminical. So, in other words, what comes to us negative comes back positive. That's the way we are supposed to be. And just like you see that in the outreach we do, in spreading Krishna consciousness. Oftentimes there's lots and lots of negativity that comes to us. And what do? We don't give up. We just remain positive. Okay, that person is not nice to us. I'm sorry, excuse me, sir, have a good day. We're nice to them. And we're nice to the next person. We're not going to be mean to the next person we approach because the person we spoke to before was mean to us. We learned that in distributing Prabhupada's books. We have to always be kind and compassionate. Otherwise, we won't be successful. So no matter how we're treated, we always come back with tolerance and kindness and understanding, and apologize if we need to. So now we need to apply that everywhere in our life, because the nature of life is that not everyone's going to be kind to us. So the principle of forgiveness is pardoning, but it's more than that. And the pardoning is hard enough, but it's more than that. This is where it gets difficult. The principle of forgiveness is to be kind to those who are not kind to you, to properly treat those who mistreated you. So here, this story is so interesting because Parsaram is Shaktivish avatar, and he's retaliating for a small crime with a big punishment. And his father is telling him that's a sin, and Prabhupada's saying even though he's Shaktivish avatar, that's a sin, he did the wrong thing. Of course, we can say this is all exemplary and transcendental and so forth. But the point is that it's being shown that even a Shaktivish avatar, if he's not careful, can do the wrong thing. What to speak of us? Yeah, for us, it's more like rare to do the right thing and common to do the wrong thing. So anyway, the point I'm making in this particular verse is that sometimes we're really pushed to act in a way that's not Krishna conscious. And we somehow or other forget that our goal in life is to please Krishna. So it doesn't matter what that person has done to me. What matters is, will my actions be pleasing to Krishna? That's all that matters. You can forget about what that person said or did. It doesn't matter. They're having a bad day, or whatever, or a bad life, or many bad lives. But what matters is our relation with Krishna. So it's not how I feel to retaliate against this person because they upset me and I feel upset, therefore I feel justified because they punched first so I can punch back. And so we kind of degrade ourselves into the emotional state of a 7-year-old. But really, what we're supposed to be thinking is, at this point, what does Krishna want me to do? How does he want me to act? What would be pleasing to Krishna? What would be beneficial in my relationship with Krishna? It has nothing to do about retaliation to this person. All I'm concerned with is how Krishna would want me to act. So you want to know how to act? Well, let's read the verse. The duty of the Brahman is to culture the quality of forgiveness, which is illuminating like the sun. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is pleased with those who are forgiving. So that answers the question. Whenever you feel like retaliating, what should you do? The answer is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with those who are forgiving. So instead of thinking, I want to get back at this person, think of your relationship with Krishna. That's what's so amazing about the material world. That's what's so purifying about the material world, is that all kinds of situations come that are disturbing all the time. Just like last night, I didn't clean the kitchen. I was really tired. And my daughter didn't clean the kitchen because she was really tired. And my wife got up this morning. She said, she went to bed early. She was tired. And we were up late. And we didn't clean the kitchen. So nobody cleaned the kitchen. So just a little thing, like nobody cleaned the kitchen, is disturbing because she worked so hard in the kitchen. And now she's getting on my case. Why didn't you clean the kitchen? So this is what life is like. These are people who love one another, but there's always some friction everywhere, all the time. And so naturally, there's a gut emotional level response. Lay off my case, it's okay. Nothing's wrong. All the prasadam's still good. We can clean it, or just don't talk to me, or get angry. As opposed to thinking, okay, what's the best reaction in terms of what would develop my relationship with Krishna? So obviously I please the Vaishnavas, Krishna's pleased. We don't always think that way. And that's the most obvious thing to think. That's the first thing we should think in any situation is, how can I please Krishna by my reaction to the situation? So that's why Prabhupada said, it's so obvious you miss it. And how many times do we miss this simple point? What should I do? I'm so confused. I don't know. Should I get back at them? They deserve to be punished. So on and so forth. If I see them, I get close to them, it's going to be dangerous. Wait a minute. What about Krishna in this picture? What about your relationship with Krishna? Just ask that question. What would be the best thing to connect with Krishna? And forget that person. It doesn't matter. That person doesn't matter. One of the most amazing things that I've seen in the forgiveness process is that you reach a point where that person you're trying to forgive kind of disappears, and you're just looking at yourself and you're trying to understand why you reacted that way. And it's not about the person or what they did. It all becomes about your reaction. And so your focus is, why did I react in such a tamasic way to this action? And why did I not consider how this action affects my relationship with Guru and Krishna? Why was I just considering how the need for me to get back? I read something yesterday, and it's going to come out maybe on October 19th or 20th as a quote on Facebook, on my daily quotes. And it's this beautiful quote. I don't know who said it, but those who need the most love are the ones who deserve it. The ones who least. Those who need the most love are the ones who deserve it least. Wow. Wow. And what is our position? No, somebody does something because they're troubled or they're weak. And we don't want to give them love. We want to give them justice and chastisement and put them in their place, or never see them again, or never talk to them again, or tell the whole world how bad they are. but actually they need love. And a nice example was given by Radhika Ramana Prabhu, who was a professor in, I think he's in Utah. And so he said something that I think can help us tremendously. He said, you go through lifetimes, and there's so much stress and so much pain and so much struggle that's just kind of beating us down. Just to face the world and deal. Sometimes your best friend turns against you and criticizes you, and you say something innocent, and in a talk, and it's put on Facebook, and now people are taking exception to it and criticizing you, and we're always getting beaten down in some way or another. Life is difficult. So Radhika Ramana, he said something I really appreciated. He said, you can see the physical ailments in a person when they get old, the way they walk or bend over. But we can't see the subtle body. But imagine we could see the subtle body, how torn apart it is, how bruised, how beat up it is. And if we could see that, then when a person did something to hurt us or to hurt another person, we would understand, here's a bruised, damaged living entity who's been through millions of lives of suffering. So we would feel somewhat sorry for them, or compassionate, or at least understanding, by seeing all the bruises and broken parts of their subtle body. So that's how Krishna wants us to see it. So rather than retaliate, we should think, okay, well, how does Krishna want us to deal with this situation? How does Krishna want us to see this situation? So, yes, let's just read the purport. And then, I know you have questions. We can go to your questions. Yeah. I want to read the last two verses. Different personalities become beautiful by possessing different qualities. Janaka Pandit says that the cuckoo bird, although very black, is beautiful because of its sweet voice. Cuckoo! Similarly, a woman becomes beautiful by her chastity and faithfulness to her husband. In other words, even if she's not physically beautiful, she becomes beautiful by her chastity. And an ugly person becomes beautiful when he becomes a learned scholar. In the same way, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras become beautiful by their qualities. Brahmanas are beautiful when they are forgiving. Kshatriyas when they're heroic and never retreat from fighting. Vaishyas when they enrich cultural activities and protect cows. And Shudras when they are faithful in the discharge of duties. In the discharge of duties pleasing to their masters. Thus everyone becomes beautiful by a special quality, and the special quality of the Brahmins is described here. As described here is forgiveness. That's what makes Brahmins beautiful. It's our forgiveness. Brahmins and Brahmanis, hello. Your beauty is in your forgiveness. Next verse, this is 41. It's the last verse of chapter 15 of the 9th canto. My dear son, a king who is an emperor is more severely sinful. Killing a king who is an emperor is more severely sinful than killing a Brahmana. Wow. But now, if you become Krishna conscious and worship the holy places, you can atone for this great sin. So, Jamdagani is saying, my dear son, Shaktivish avatar, Das avatar, you committed a sin and you have to atone for it. That's the message. Wow. That is... I just find that so amazing, that even the Supreme Personality of Shaktivish Avatar has to atone for a sin. Purport. One who fully surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is freed from all sins. Aham tam sarva papepyo mokshishami. From the very day or moment he fully surrenders to Krishna, even the most sinful person is freed. Nevertheless, as an example, Jamdagani advised his son Parsaram to worship the holy places, because an ordinary person cannot immediately surrender to the personality of Godhead. He is advised to go from one holy place to another, to find saintly persons, and thus gradually be released from sinful activities. Now, there's another purport. I can't find it, I'm so sorry. I wanted to read it to you. But basically, it was explaining this point that even the Shaktivish avatar can't think that I can just do anything and there's not the reaction. There's going to be a reaction. So I'm going to read your questions now. That's those were the points I wanted to make. Let me just, before I read your questions, let me just emphasize this last point I was making, that in the forgiveness process, when you evolve to a certain point, it no longer becomes about what the person did, and it becomes totally about your reaction to what that person did. In other words, whatever a person does, whether no matter how wrong it is or bad, or no matter how much they hurt you, that is not really what we want to focus on. We want to focus on how I deal with it. And so I was saying before, every situation in life is an opportunity to respond to something negative. Not every opportunity, but many opportunities in life are opportunities to respond to negativity with something Krishna conscious. So that way, the material world, it's such a fantastic place, because if you take it properly, you have to be purified, because you're forced, you're pushed up against the wall by so many horrible things, and friends that turn against you, and lovers that turn against you, and situations that turn against you. And you have this opportunity to either become more Krishna conscious or less Krishna conscious. So if you take it properly, you can become more Krishna. Everything can make you more Krishna conscious. It's just the way the world is working. Last week we had a forgiveness workshop, and one theme kept coming out again and again. Obvious theme that we all know is that we're not the controller. But all the forgiveness was about wanting to control the situation, wanting to be able to retaliate, not allowing to let it go, which is a control issue. And so we were talking about how in the material world, we're trying to learn a lesson. And what is the lesson? The lesson is, I'm not the controller. Okay, you've heard that a million times, but 1,000,001. Now you've heard it 1,000,001. But we don't get the lesson. So Krishna is showing us in so many situations, we can't control this, we can't control that, we can't control this, we can't control that. So now there's so many situations coming to us, and they're all opportunities to accept that I can't control, and they're all opportunities to respond to negativity with something positive. Wow. Now how good is that? If you could do that, how Krishna consciousness is that? That's what this world is facilitating. We'll be mistreated all the time. We'll be How many times have you been misunderstood? Like 1,000,000? We will be misunderstood. We will be disrespected. Sometimes we won't even be tolerated. We'll be condemned, criticized, and so forth. What wonderful opportunities to learn how to respond with something different, to learn how to respond with whatever it is, understanding, kindness, maybe neutrality, as someone said. Can you just be neutral? Sometimes, yeah, you just be neutral. You don't retaliate. You don't kiss them and hug them for being angry with you. You just, okay, sorry, and you distance yourself. So the world provides so many opportunities to be Krishna conscious. The people you're closest to provide the best opportunities, because you have more opportunity for friction, or more reason to be friction, because your expectations for affection and care and concern are higher. So the world is just providing us tremendous opportunities to practice tolerance and kindness when we don't feel like it, when people don't deserve it, and we follow the motto of the one who deserve, the ones who need love the most, the ones who deserve it least. And my sister's now watching, and I was telling the story, Bev, about how you were advised by our mother to give affection to the students that had the most trouble, and you said, yeah, it actually worked. The ones who have the most trouble are the most in need of affection, because they probably didn't get affection growing up, and that's why they need it now, right? So I'm going to try to find your questions, and sometimes in trying to find your questions, I miss something, so if I do, please forgive me and just remind me that I missed your question, and then I can go back. Krishna Karshani says, Dharmic means religious, so how it cannot please Krishna and how it can be sinful. Yeah, because sometimes Krishna may want you to do something which, you see, bhakti is higher than dharma. Dharma is a kind of morality. which common people should follow. But then, in the presence of Krishna, Krishna may say, we need to do this because it will achieve a higher purpose or a higher good. And so, he may tell you to break a dharmic principle for a higher cause, a higher good. So if he tells you to break it and you don't, then by definition, disobeying what he wants is a sin. And even if he tells you to do something which is adharmic, which would be sinful, but you do it because we ask you, that would be dharmic, a higher form of dharma. So morality is not, and dharma is not the highest truth, because sometimes the right thing in a certain situation becomes the wrong thing. It doesn't become beneficial. Like the dharmic thing is to be truthful, right? And so some people are trying to kill you because they hate you, and you run into my house to hide, and then those people come looking for you, and they say, "Are you here?" And I say, I haven't seen them. I don't know where they are." And they say, "Okay." And then they go away. I just saved your life. But I lied to save your life. But I lied for a higher purpose, for a higher dharma. So that's the idea. Okay. Yes, you missed me. I've come back after a few weeks of no classes. Do we have the right to ignore the person? You do. In Krishna consciousness, I don't know if the word ignore would be, but let's say someone does something to harm you, and you forgive them, but being around them is not good for you. It's toxic, it's detrimental, it's disturbing. So you just want to, yes, be neutral. You see, the point is, if you're practicing spiritual life, you don't want to hate anybody. You might hate what they do, but hating a person is not what spiritual life is about. So if you hate what they do, you may have to distance yourself or just be neutral. So that way, you're not getting caught in the duality of love and hate, and that's a platform we need to practice spiritual life. So I don't love you, I don't hate you. I don't want to deal with you, but I don't want to hate you either. And I can't love you in the sense that I used to love you, or when we had this good relationship. I just want to be neutral. That will be the best for both of us, and the best for our spiritual lives and material lives. So yeah, so that's the point. Don't go hatred and neutral at the same time. Neutral means no hatred. It's just, yeah, distance, okay. I prefer not to be close or work with this person. I think in your case, you're talking about a husband who's violent. If you're talking about a husband who's violent, yeah, definitely. It's beyond neutral. It's just distance, protection. Ganesha says, I can think of situations where I could have done this. Yeah, respond. Ganesha, I can think of situations not where you could have done it, where you have. Because Guru Nishta thinks that I'm too tolerant with devotees. And she says, why are you tolerant with such a devotee? Because the devotee did something wrong, or the devotee doesn't treat you well. And the reason is because those who hurt the most need the most love. Those who deserve it least need the most. And so sometimes it's because of a lack of affection and attention and so forth that they act this way. So it's true. Sometimes devotees will see me and say, no, you're too tolerant. But sometimes that tolerance is what heals the other person. At least we try to be merciful. That's the position of Guru, to always give mercy. If a person doesn't take the mercy, what can the Guru do? And if the Guru continually gives mercy and a person rejects it, then the Guru may say, okay, that you don't want it, I will stop. But if the person's trying to take it, is open to take it, then he'll always give it. And you should always give it, and you should always be favorably disposed to a person who's trying, because Krishna says, 9th chapter, 30th verse, if someone's trying, you have to see them as a sadhu. And if you don't see them as a sadhu, that's an offense to me. So again, we get back in this paradigm of how we're dealing with another person is affecting our relationship with Krishna. And Krishna's saying, if a person's trying to be Krishna conscious, you accept him as a saint because he's trying. Not because of where he's at now, but because of what he's trying to accomplish. So Krishna Karshani says, understand your points, I agree, but hearing this story, a thought came to my mind that even if Shaktivish avatar was not able to forgive, what about me? Just an ordinary weak and conditioned person. Yeah. Well, Prabhupada addressed this point, and he said sometimes these stories are there in the Bhagavatam to teach us. But he was able to forgive. He just, in that moment, he's setting the example that caught up in his anger, he did the wrong thing, but his father asked him to forgive, and he did. So you have stories in Bhagavatam of people doing the wrong thing because we can relate to that. Okay, so rather than think, well, a Shaktivish avatar did it, so what do you expect from me? We're supposed to learn from all the stories. Indra apologizes, Brahma apologizes, Durvasa Muni apologizes, all these stories. They did wrong things, just like you and I do wrong things. They retaliated, they were angry. And with Indra and Brahma, they did wrong things to Krishna, which is pretty heavy. So we're meant to take those stories, learn from those stories, how the person rectified the situation. Not that we're supposed to think, well, Brahma and Indra did such horrible things, what about me? Another way you could look at it is you're a devotee, so actually you have the power and the mercy to not do those things. So even though Indra, Brahma may have done horrible things, in a sense, for us it's even worse, because we have the power not to do those things, because we have the holy name and we have the process. So we should expect more from ourselves, even. But Prabhupada did say, in relation to this, he did say that when these things happen, we're supposed to think, okay, here's a great personality, they've succumbed to this, so I really need to be careful. Not that we should think, well, I can't control this because they couldn't control it. Rather, we think, how much more difficult it's going to be for me, and therefore how much more I need to try to control this. So let's say you're challenged with forgiving, or challenged with being nice to people who aren't nice to you. So you should think, okay, if it's difficult for Parsaram, how much more difficult it's going to be for me, and therefore how much more I need to try. That's the idea. There's so many situations where devotees sometimes think, yeah, but I'm weak, so I just give up. But it's supposed to be the other. Yeah, I'm weak, and therefore I have to try harder. That's what you do. If you're not healthy, maybe you're going to have to try harder to get healthy than a healthy person, rather than, well, I'm not healthy, so why try? That's not the way we're supposed to deal with it. It's understandable, we would think that way, but it's not. And there's a... Mog says he's giving us something to watch on YouTube. I'm not sure. What is that, Mog? She said it was a good message about how to not disturb or remain peaceful. Guru Nisha says, I had this realization that for how many thousands of lifetimes has my soul been suffering due to my mind? If I could save my soul from my mind this life, in this lifetime, hopefully, yeah. Well, Krishna consciousness is a healing process, so it's meant to heal the pain by pouring all the nectar of Krishna Katha and association and service and so forth. And it's replaced with bliss, and that bliss heals us and allows us to experience something other than just continual suffering. Are there any more questions? Krishna Karshini. How to love people who need love, but they behave in a way that we want to keep a distance from them. We have one person in my town, he's a devotee, I know he really needs love, but when he comes for the program, he was putting all the devotees in anxiety, so it looks that he needs love, but we're not able to give it to him. Well, one, I can't say specifically for this devotee, I can give a general instruction, is when somebody is acting in a way that's disturbing, we want to ask the question, what needs is this person trying to fulfill through these actions? And then when you understand the needs, then you can see if you can satisfy those needs, or in some way work with that person to help him satisfy those needs in a healthy way. So my wife said something, I don't know if I've told you before, it's something that she learned in her training, in couples training, was that behind every complaint is a need. So whenever you see somebody complaining, rather than take offense or think there's something wrong with them or dislike them or distance yourself, you may choose to consider what is the need behind this complaint and could I fulfill that need. So that's a starting point. Now, having said that, I will say that there are some people who are very damaged, who don't know how to properly associate, and the more love you give, the more they misuse it. And the milk fed to the serpent just causes venom. So we have seen that sometimes we do give people time and attention. And the more time and attention you give, the more time and attention they expect. And therefore it gets worse because you can't always maintain that level of time and attention. And when you don't, now what was normal before for them is problematic because now they're used to a higher standard of love and affection. So they really need to be helped and beyond what we may be able to offer in terms of, support and affection. And the other thing to consider is that we have to also be concerned about the atmosphere, the culture we create in the association of devotees. So if one person is the bad apple that's spoiling everything and making it difficult for everyone else, we may consider that it may not be proper for them to associate until they get better, because it could be disturbing so many or bringing down the atmosphere in such a way that their presence is a little bit toxic. And we would have to deal with that. How you deal with that in every case, I can't say. But sometimes I've personally had to do that because there were devotees that were disturbing everybody. And so in their association, everybody was upset. And we had to explain that to the devotee, that your behavior is upsetting everyone and you can't behave in this way. If you want the devotees' association, it's not that we're pulling you out of the association, but they just won't associate with you. It'll be too disturbing. So that's a consideration also. Try your love first. Ganesha says, association is one part that I'm dearly missing. She lives kind of isolated in this process. Krishna needs to change that for me somehow. Yeah, well, you can't, somehow or other, Guru Nishta lives right around the corner from a Ritvik temple. But anyway, even though they're Ritviks, association may be okay. Some of them may be nice Ritviks and talk about Prabhupada and not belittle you or your spiritual master. Otherwise, keep praying for association and, at least once a week go to the main temple, if you can. Okay, so I'm going to be attending a class soon. There's a retreat here on health, and whatever I learn, I will share with you. If what I learned, I think, hopefully it's going to be valuable. Share with you ways in which you can prevent being unnecessarily sick or coming down with chronic illness. So I'm asking your permission if I can leave now, unless someone has some question. And then we're going to have class tomorrow at the same time, and we will talk a little more about this topic. And then on Monday, we're going to have another class on Gunagaram Maharaj. I had written an offering. I think some of you have seen it, and I want to elaborate on that offering. I think it would be valuable for all of us. So that's going to be 6:15 Eastern Standard Time. That's 8:15 p.m. in Australia, and that means if you live anywhere east of New York, going towards Europe, it will all be suitable time. I see we have 2 more questions, or 3. Oh my God. I still have to eat breakfast. In case, in the heat of the moment, I am able to forgive and end up getting angry on someone, what would be the atonement for that? An apology, yeah. Apology is interesting, because most of us just say, I'm sorry. And the thing about saying I'm sorry is that people often will think that's just an excuse to will your way out and you haven't taken responsibility. So if you're going to make an apology, you need to take responsibility in two ways. Number one, acknowledge the pain it caused them. Number two, so you take responsibility for the pain it caused them and acknowledge that what you did was wrong. Take responsibility for your behavior, for your emotions and your actions. So that is really important, that you take responsibility and you recognize the pain that it caused them. So I know what I did was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. It was the wrong thing. I know it must have caused you these problems. And then another thing is to go into a state of remorse or be in a state of remorse where you tell the person, this is the lesson I've learned, and learning this lesson will prevent me from doing it again. It has to be more than just, I'm sorry. It has to show that there's some understanding of what happened, the mistake you made, how it affected them, and how you'll rectify it. And then when you apologize, then it has some Shakti. And you'll find in Bhagavatam, there's lots of apologies when devotees offend one another, and even with Indra and Brahma apologizing, and they state the offense. This is what I did. It's clear. They state it. Yeah, I realize this is what I did, because the person wants to know, do you know what you did? You say, I'm sorry. Yeah, for what? Do you realize what you did? So the devotee, in asking for apology, states, this is what I did, just so the person that you're apologizing to is aware that you are fully conscious of what you did. So that's not just something that we got in the secular world, although the secular world does say that, but that's also there in the Bhagavatam. It's stated, this is what I did. I understand it. Saying the Ritviks are nice, but when they find out you're initiated, they may become a little distant. Yeah. Yeah. How do you deal with a devotee whose behavior causes many people to stop coming to the temple? Do you ask them to stop coming? They're not interested in having a dialogue. They're not interested in having a dialogue. Yeah, I would, the principle, of course, this is a general principle. If I'm sitting in front of that devotee, seeing his face, listening to him, I might respond differently. But that saying that to sacrifice a village, you can sacrifice a person. To sacrifice a town, you can sacrifice a village. To sacrifice a state, you can sacrifice a town. To sacrifice the country, you can sacrifice a state. And to sacrifice for spiritual life, you can sacrifice your whole life. It was a progression, but still, that sometimes you may have to sacrifice one for the benefit of the other. So sometimes it's necessary that if someone is causing a disturbance to a lot of devotees in which the hearing and chanting cannot be done properly, or especially if new people who could be Krishna conscious are getting turned off, then yeah, you do have a valid reason for restricting that person in some way. Sometimes people will say, you can't restrict someone from coming to the temple. And that's true, unless there's a valid reason. You may restrict them from attending certain programs because they won't listen, they're incorrigible, they disturb the situation. And so it's interfering with the preaching, and it is really wrong, is really bad. You could call it demoniac, whatever you want to call it. It's just wrong to interfere with the preaching, and that we shouldn't really tolerate. We want to be nice in dealing with people. We always want to be exemplary if we have to sanction someone, not out of anger, envy, or whatever, but out of practicality. And that's what it means to administer. That's what it means to manage. That's what it means to be a Vaishya. To administer based on Dharma, what is in the best interest of everyone, not based on enmity towards an individual. Okay? I think that's... okay, so we will see you tomorrow. Good to be back after a long absence in strange time zones and so forth. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.